Hey everyone, this video goes out to Oallos, O-A-L-L-O-S, who sent me a response to a faith or fact video I made a while ago. Thanks for responding, and I feel I should return the favour. As I talk, please enjoy our planet, take it in, it's the only one we've got. I'll begin with the assertion that Arthur removed a sword from stone. Now you can believe he removed it, or you can prove he removed it. Much like the story of Arthur, be he true or not, over time his feats were exaggerated. Was Merlin a mighty magician, or did Merlin understand chemistry? Thanks to the wonders of Hollywood, history can now be written in the minds of its viewers. Have you seen the movie 300? Let's see how you present your argument. Your title. You begin with Jesus versus Dionysus. Personally, I would have chosen Jesus versus Mithras. They seem to have more in common.
Someone might raise their hand and say, the whole Bible is a hoax. None of it is true. The Old Testament documents are all false.
When the Old Testament claims that Adam and Eve, born Cain and Abel, after Cain allegedly kills Abel, Cain finds an unnamed wife and bears Enoch, and then builds a city. As there are only 3 people on earth previous to this mystery birth, who born Cain's wife? I hope it wasn't Eve, as that would be incest. And why build a city for 5 people? Not to mention Abel's sudden developments in animal domestication, or Cain's understanding of agriculture and the development of farming tools. Of course, history states this is not something we learned in a day. If it was the case of God's imparting knowledge, that would mean we would never have to learn anything, as we already know it. Not to mention, humans lived for hundreds of years with giants, and there was a global flood. Now, I don't want to dwell on the first few pages of the Bible, so let's move on.
Please provide evidence for this.
You claim we should provide evidence to disprove your God or the stories in the Bible. Well, I'm sorry, but it's your mission to prove they're correct.
Again, why would the Jews create a person in their literature and then reject him?
Well, you have to ask the Jews that one. If indeed the Jews created this literature, don't forget there were many people claiming to be the Messiah at the time, and we have seen many examples of Christian rituals taken from pagan sources.
You know what those are. In 1947, scriptures were contained, portions of all books of the Old Testament. They found these in a cave near the Dead Sea. A whole bunch of scrolls, okay? And they dated to around 200 BC. Guess what? I saw parts of these scrolls on the wall with the literal translation underneath. I opened my Bible, which I had with me, and there it was, word for word. Everything was just literally untouched. Was the whole discovery a fraud?
The fact an old book was found doesn't make it more credible, and as you cite the writings virtually unchanged doesn't add weight to the credibility of the story. As I pointed out earlier, there's some pretty inconsistent and outlandish claims which, according to you, still stand as true. Would finding an ancient parchment telling the story of Zeus bring that mythology to life? As we see gods depicted in Egypt, do they stand as fact? The only fact they represent is what the belief was at the time. No, I don't think the discovery was a fraud, it's just what was written at the time.
Was there something to the Bible and all its prophetic nature that you just don't want to accept?
The only prophetic nature of the Bible I can't accept is that it didn't predict events like Islam, planes, or computers, only what serves religious interest. Like Jesus returning to earth. With over 2,000 years and countless suffrage in God's name, I don't think he's coming back. Before we begin your quotes, I just want to make it clear that I can accept that a man named Jesus walked the earth, but that's where I draw the line.
By Cornelius Tacitus, he wrote this. Consequently, to get rid of the report, Nero fastened the guilt and inflicted the most exquisite tortures on a class hated for their abominations, called Christians by the populace. This Christ, from whom the name had its origin, suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius at the hands of one of our procurators, Pontius Pilatus.
Citing religious persecution on the claim of a false prophet only enforces the fact that if you say you are the Son of God in an Old Testament world, one and followers will be persecuted. No surprise there.
Gaius Suetonius Tranquillus is what he said, or wrote. Because the Jews of Rome caused continuous disturbances at the instigation of Christus, Claudius expelled them from the city. After the Great Fire of Rome, during Nero's reign, punishments were also inflicted on the Christians, a sect professing a new and mischievous religious belief.
More religious persecution. What would happen to those professing the righteousness of Scientology in the ancient world? Today such cultism is dismissed as lunacy. The difference is instead of using words, the sword was preferred. It doesn't make it right, just the level of acceptance by followers was usually the poor and uneducated who didn't hold a place in authority.
Okay, here's one that skeptics hate and disclaim completely. Flavius Josephus. And I don't know why, the facts are in, ladies and gentlemen, and here's what he said. At this time there was a wise man who was called Jesus, and his conduct was good, and he was known to be virtuous. And many people from among the Jews and other nations became his disciples. Pilate condemned him to be crucified and to die. And those who had become his disciples did not abandon his discipleship.
Such was the remarkable PR campaign pushed by the docile flock living in an age of mysticism. Simply a mortal man loved by some and by many who had never even met him. Then again, so was Justin Timberlake.
The Jewish Talmud. On the eve of the Passover, Yeshua was hanged. For 40 days before the execution took place, a herald went forth and cried, "He is going forth to be stoned because he has practiced sorcery and enticed Israel to apostasy. Anyone who can say anything in his favor, let him come forward and plead on his behalf." But since nothing was brought forward in his favor, he was hanged on the eve of the Passover. Who is this talking about here?
I'm not sure what point you were trying to make here. To me it sounds like a heretic was hanged. Had he been making claims to be the Son of God in the savage Old Testament world previous to this, the soothsayer was merely stating a foregone conclusion.
Okay, another one. Mara bar Serapion of Syria. He wrote this, this is an interesting one. He wrote this from prison to motivate his son to emulate wise teachings of the past, okay? What advantage did the Athenians gain from putting Socrates to death? Famine and plague came upon them as a judgment for their crime. What advantage did the men of Samos gain from burying Pythagoras? In a moment their land was covered with sand. What advantage did the Jews gain from executing their wise king? It was just after that their kingdom was abolished. God justly avenged these three wise men. The Athenians died of hunger. The Samians were overwhelmed by the sea. The Jews, ruined and driven from their land, live in complete dispersion. But Socrates did not die for good. He lived on in the teaching of Plato. Pythagoras did not die for good. He lived on in the statue of Hera. Nor did the wise king die for good. He lived on in the teaching which he had given. Now, if you're saying this is not Jesus Christ, please provide me evidence to whom this is referring to.
More ancient wisdom citing natural earthly events with a god, much like the Westboro Church have with Hurricane Katrina. Asking if this is indeed Jesus we are talking about, I refer you to the Justin Timberlake comment. Who in the ancient world, desperate for something other than Roman rule, would not follow the alleged Son of God preached by his convincing disciples? I'm going to skip the rest, just to save time. While I don't dispute your claim that a man named Jesus walked the earth, much like how I began with King Arthur, over time the stories get taller, the fish get bigger, if you know what I'm saying. Charisma is a powerful drug. People get conned all over the world every day. They get fleeced of their life savings, they get led off into the wilderness, and they don't even know that it's happening.
Just recently, the Associated Press was given extensive access to the largest archive of Nazi prison camp records, which has been closed for 50 years or so. Okay, this is a picture of the place where they have been archived. I guess we can't trust these either. Someone altered them. You know, Jews are going there and they're finding out about people that disappeared and their families and so forth. The documents are there. Now, what I'm saying is, I know the Quran is a document. I know the Bhagavad Gita is a document. So I'm saying that everything is true? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you can't just get documents and discredit them for being altered or for not being true without researching them and seeing what the results of these things are. Just as the Associated Press is giving documents to Jews so they can locate their families and they're seeing what happened in the past, we see that these documents are still true because of what happens today. The same thing goes for scriptures.
I found this particularly troubling. Using Holocaust deniability as an argument on the validity of documents is a pretty dodgy move on its own. You're trying to align the undeniable, indisputable fact of millions of deaths with faith in ancient text. These are polar opposites, and this is the classic faith versus fact scenario.
Accepting the historicity of Jesus is, for a lot of people, just a moral issue. It just comes down to that, rather than an intellectual. Imagine having to give up the worship of yourself to follow someone who said, "Give the other cheek, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it." I mean, to you it's insane. It's a moral decision that you make to not follow him instead of an intellectual one. But the facts are all in. I hope you do your research and you keep an open mind.
You finish with asking us, imagine having to give up the world of yourself to worship one who would say, turn the other cheek. Now, I don't know if you've looked around much, but I don't see too much love in this world, and considering most of the world follows religion, you're not really helping your cause with this statement. And finally, comparing morals with intellect, whereby you claim intellect is following the Bible, is a ridiculous notion. So, as you can see, I remain unconvinced. My research exists outside the Bible or 2,000-year-old quotes. Only by examining historical progress without religion and employing modern perspectives to the world we live in will you be enlightened. Isn't it a beautiful planet? The thing is, God didn't make this planet. I did. I used a 3D program. That's the power of illusion. Thanks for your time.